it has a female lead in a role like this. You know, this isn't. We
Saying
don't
we're
like
sexist?
this. Yes, I think this isn't Mel Gibson. This isn't. Russell Crowe blowing a bunch of crap up. This is a woman who's intellectual and who works obsessed with ideas, and it's just not. It is boring for some of those critics that I talked about. It was just boring, and I think that's sad.
Well, they just obviously they didn't do any research going into it. It's a book about it's a movie about a librarian.
Yeah.
What were they expecting? I mean, there's going to be some action scenes when they destroy the Serapeum in the library, but seriously.
I think that it's a movie that can get better, that needs multiple watchings, multiple viewings, because and I don't think that the critics that disliked it watched it more than once. I would imagine that they didn't. But that's all I want to say. I was pretty disappointed.
I read some of the I just don't. I don't buy into critical review generally, but I thought Ebert made a lot of good. I trust Ebert's judgment generally, but he made a lot of good points about this film in particular. I would read his review. He's Chicago Sun-Times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chicago Sun-Times. So what's your general assessment? Where are you on it?
I thought it was a really good movie. It's not the best. I mean, we have to think about why did we like it. As a movie, visually, we could pick it apart as far as its style, camera angles, shots, the CGI, whatever. Or do we just like it because it sort of promotes our own view? And we have to keep that bias, in the forefront so that we're aware of it. But I think just as a movie, it did a really good job of telling this story. And of course, I appreciated its look at religion and fundamentalism. And for nothing else, you could learn a little history, albeit I don't know how accurate, but as accurate as we know to have happened, and
right,
be introduced to a major female figure, historical figure.
I always wish that people would know more about Hypatia, just as a historical figure. There's some good books about her. I'd recommend Remembering Hypatia, which I'll put a link to that on the channel.
Okay. You want the question? I have 6 questions
5 and
here.
6. Can we do that?
Yeah. Okay, 5 and 6. Do you want to start generally with general overall questions or with specific questions? I was going to go to this one first because we had already touched on it.
Yeah, we did that one.
Okay.
Let's do 5 and 6.
5. Do you think the film's overall theme is anti-Christian, Catholic, or anti-fundamentalist, or neither?
Well, I mean, I don't think the pagans came off looking great in the film. I'm not saying the film is rabidly anti-pagan or anything, but it didn't paint any religious mob in a good light, whether pagan or Christian or what have you.
Jewish?
Yeah.
The Jewish who tricked them into going into that room and then stoned them?
There were no religions that escaped being depicted as the horrific generators of violence that they historically were. This wasn't just propaganda. I mean, there wasn't an event in there that you couldn't reference something in history when there's something very similar did happen. It might not have all happened in this particular order, but these religions were guilty of all of these actual crimes.
Yeah, all of them are indicted. Yeah, I would have to say that.
And I would say it's definitely pro-science, pro-reason, pro-philosophy and thought. There's a strong undercurrent of, the heroine is beleaguered, pro-science, what's the term? Free inquiry.
Yeah, free thought.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Skepticism.
And how many movies do you have? Honestly, I mean, I'd be at a loss to come up with even a short list of pro-free thought historical dramas, or even just dramas, where the main character is in favor of free-thinking, critical inquiry, and the religions come off looking like the violent, repressive regimes that they really are.
Yeah, I can't think of any right offhand,
but we'll review them when we come up with them now.
But yeah, I think it's interesting also to look at Hypatia's character and her flaws, because I think that she has flaws that are presented through her status She loves her slave Davis, who becomes a central character in the movie, but she also she tells her students that to not quarrel among yourselves because you're brothers, and that quarreling and brawling are for slaves and riffraff.
Right.
And he gives her that look, right? And she calls him an idiot at some point. And so he's constantly knows his place, and she's a teacher in a university. She's sort of an elitist person, her and her father, and they have this idea, this distinctive class difference between who they are and what the slaves are supposed to do in society. And I think that they are flawed as well. And as the movie points out, in Davis's case, his love for her and her disdain for him and love are what ultimately drive him to turn to Christianity. I think one of the major motives for him turning to Christianity. But I think that she's not shown in this angelic light either. Neither of the intellectuals.
Right.
But they certainly are not going out in the street and stoning people.
Right. Nobody is an angel in this movie. You can do that in the kitchen.
So I would say that it is more anti-fundamentalism, anti-fundamentalistic, if anything. Which is probably why the Vatican okayed it.
Well, you really, when you see the library being destroyed, you really think, God damn it. Always something making noise. When you see the library being destroyed, you feel an emotional pull, like, oh, what a tragedy. How far could our civilization have come by now if the Christian mobs hadn't burned down the libraries? And, they didn't call it the Dark Ages because the sun wasn't shining.
Right. To me, that's one of the major themes of the movie is how fundamentalism or religion sets back science and progress, because that's what it seeks to do. It seeks to make culture, society, its practices constant and never changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so any kind of questioning, like for example, when Orestes he says to Hypatia during one of the seminars or lectures, he says, I wish the gods had asked me or consulted me when they started planning the universe. and it's Synesius, who later becomes bishop. He says, this is heresy. You're questioning God's creation. You're questioning God, and which tells you that any look into science or any questioning of how the universe works is automatically a blasphemy. God, you're saying that this isn't perfect, or you're trying to describe it as not perfect circles, but as ellipses, which are not as perfect for some reason. And so you're questioning and you're tainting God's creation with your knowledge. To me, that's an overriding theme throughout the movie.
The tension between revelation, which is set in stone or set on Scripture, and is not changing.
Is not changing.
And science, which is always asking questions, like, what if it's this? What if we're wrong about this? What if the planets are really going around the sun? Sort of fundamental questions about reality.
And by her own admission, Hypatia says, I can't not do this. Mm-hmm. I have to question. She's almost as fundamentalist that way as they are conservative the other. It's just which way would you want to be? Which way would you want the world to be? Constantly questioning, which doesn't mean constantly changing, because questioning presents a hypothetical situation. It